So the 9.2 also includes what are called parabolas, which we have looked at various forms of parabolas. We've done the quadratic. We've done vertex form, which is the y equals a x minus h quantity squared plus k. We've done stuff like that. And now we're going to put it into what we would call a standard form. So it'll be in one of these two forms. H and K still stand for the vertex, but now it helps us tell a little bit more about the shape. And the way I teach it, I always put the squared on the left and the single quantity with the 4p in front of it on the right. So some of the new stuff that you're seeing would be when x is squared, it's vertical, or when y is to the first power, you could think of it as vertical. When y squared, horizontal, or when x is to the first power, it's horizontal. So you can have parabolas that go up, down, right, and left. And so the thing that's called 4p, you're going to take that off to the side, set it equal to 0, and solve it. Or there'll be a number there, and you'll set it equal to 4p. And you'll solve for that. P is positive, it goes up if x is squared and all this stuff. So refer back to these drawings. The new things that you basically want to remember are we have what are called, it's called a focus. That'll be inside. And we have a directrix, which will be outside of the parabola, perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. So let's just take a look at one and see what happens. So when I see that y is being squared, I know that this is a horizontal parabola. So I'll go side to side. So first of all, I'm going to take the x, which is 3, so the vertex is 3, 2. So I draw in my vertex. Because I know this is horizontal, I know my axis of symmetry will run right through that, and that will be at y equals 2. Then I can take that number right there that sits in front of this, like what I call the single quantity, that's to the first power. So I'm going to take 4p, set it equal to -8, divide both sides by 4, and it tells me that the p-value would be -2. Now, because it is negative and this thing is horizontal, I know that it's going to open to the left. And then from the vertex, so remember the vertex is at 3, 2. From the vertex, I'm going to go inside my parabola 2 spaces. So now that is 1, 2, and that's what we call a focus. And because I went to the left 2 to get to the focus, I'm going to go to the right 2 and draw this vertical line like this, which is perpendicular to the x-axis. That's called the directrix. That's going to be sitting at x equals 5. So I moved 2 to the left from the vertex, 2 to the right from the vertex, the distance of p. So that distance is p. All right, so let's try another one. I would move things that are, x squared is to the first squared, x is being squared. So we're going to leave that on the left. So I'm going to have x squared minus 2x. I'm going to be adding some new number there. The 8y will go over as a positive, and the 23 will go over as a positive. So I'm going to take negative 2, divide by 2. I got negative 1. I square it, and I get 1. Now, if I add 1 on the left side of the equation, I have to add 1 on the right-hand side of the equation. So now I have x minus 1, quantity squared. Remember, this number goes in the parentheses. And then this is, what happens here is you have 8y plus 24. Well, both of those are divisible by 8 or have a factor of 8, so I can pull 8 out. And there's my standard form. Because the x is squared or y is to the first power, however you want to think about it, I know this is vertical, up and down. So I'm going to put a vertex at 1, negative 3. One, negative 3. Then I know my axis of symmetry will run vertically through that at x equals 1. Then I take the 8 and I say 4p is equal to 8. Divide both sides by 4. P is equal to 2. And because it's positive 2, I know it's going up. So I'm going to draw a parabola going up. And then I'm going to go inside the parabola 2 spaces. That will be my focus. That will be 1, negative 1. I only go up 2 from the vertex. And then I go down 2 from the vertex. And I draw this horizontal line. That's down 2 from the vertex. So that's y equals negative 5. So you have the vertex labeled, the focus labeled, directrix, and axis of symmetry. All right, well, the next one is a DIY. So you have to complete the square and move things around, see if you can do that, and then come back and look at the answer. Pause the video now. All right, so y squared. So I moved, this should have been negative 2x here. So you're going to move that to the other side. It becomes 2x and negative 14. You have to factor the 1/8 away from y squared. So now take 2 and divide by 1/8. Dividing by 1/8 is the same as multiplying by 8, so you end up with 16 here. So your middle term was 16. Divide by 2, I get 8. Square it, I get 64. So when I add 64, you have to remember there's a number out front. So draw that dotted line. 1/8 times 64 is 8. So I've changed by 8. So I add 8 over here. Now I have a positive 8 in parentheses, so I have y plus 8, quantity squared. I have a 2x. I have a negative 6. Now it's okay to have a number in front of this stuff, not in front of this one. So when you factor the 2 out of the 2x and negative 6, you have 2x minus 3. Now when you divide by 8, or the 1/8, you're multiplying by 8 again. So that's how I ended up with the 16 there. So this is your standard form right here. 3, negative 8 is your vertex. I'm going to take the 16 off to the side and say 4p equals 16. So p is positive 4. So that means my parabola is going to the right. So I can draw a parabola going to the right. I can do my axis of symmetry right through the vertex. That'll be at y equals negative 8. Then I go inside, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. That's my focus. So I add it to the 3, so that's 7, negative 8. And I'm going to go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4. And I get this vertical line at x equals negative 1. So you should, when you're done, have a vertex, a focus, a directrix, and an axis of symmetry. Okay, so number 4 is another DIY. So find your standard form, then do your sketch. Come back and check your answer. Pause the video now. All right, so if you did all the work, now we're going to flip over and take a look at the answer. Should have a parabola opening down in this vertex in the second quadrant. So here's your equation. The 4y and the negative 6 go over as a negative 4y, positive 6. Then you have to take the 2 away from x squared. So that means you have to take 12 and also divide by 2, so you get 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Add that. Draw your dotted line because we have something out front. So you've changed the problem by 18 on the left. You need to change the problem by 18 on the right. So now you'd have something like this. Positive 3 in the parentheses right here, so positive 3 there. This turns out to be negative 4y plus 24. If you factor the negative 4 out, you would have y minus 6. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is positive 1. 24 divided by negative 4 is negative 6. Then we don't want anything in front of the squared quantity, so divide by 2. And here's your standard form. Negative 3, 6. So I went to the left 3, up 6. This is my vertex right here. Now, take the 4p, set it equal to negative 2. You get a p value that's equal to negative 1/2. Well, the negative tells me that we're going downward direction. X is being squared. X is squared, or y to the first power tells you that it's vertical. So you have a vertical axis of symmetry at x equals negative 3, a vertex at negative 3, 6, and then draw your parabola going down. And then because p is 1/2, you're only going 1/2 from the vertex inside to the focus. So you're at negative 3, 6. If I go down 1/2 would be 5.5 or 5.5. Now I go up for what is called the directrix, and I add 1/2 to the 6, and I get 6.5. Okay, so now we get into some examples with they're giving us information and we have to draw or come up with the standard form. So I have a vertex at negative 3, 6. So a vertex, I have a focus at negative 3, 0. What this tells me then is that my parabola always has to wrap around, goes around the focus. So this thing is going to have to be opening down. When it's opening down, I know it's going to have the form x minus h quantity squared is equal to 4p y minus k. So I know my h and k. I put a negative 3 there, and I put a 6 there. And then I look at the distance for the p value from 6. The y value is 6, so it's a distance of 6 from 0. Remember, this thing is negative 3, 0. So how far is it from 6 to 0? But it's also going down, so I have to put the negative in there. So that's negative 6. So my final answer would be x plus 3 quantity squared minus a negative 3. I have negative 24 here, and y minus 6. So you draw the picture, and then you just come up with your vertex and the p-value. Same thing. What information are they giving us? So draw an x and y axis. At x equals 4, they're telling me I have what is called the directrix. And the focus is at 8, 4. So if the focus is there, my vertex would be halfway between those 2 points, or between the directrix and the focus. So what's halfway between 4? So I have 8, 4. So between x is 4 and x is 8, I'm going to have x is 6, right? So 6, 4 is my vertex, and the parabola has to open away from the directrix. It can't touch the directrix. It opens away from it. And because it's sideways, now I know it's y minus h, technically k, sorry. Y minus k quantity squared is equal to 4p x minus h. So when you write your vertex in, make sure you put the 6 with the x and the 4 with the k. And then you need to find that p-value again. So how far is it here and here? Well, that's a distance of 2. So I know p is 2, and it opens to the right, so it's positive, so I can just put a 2 there. So my final answer would be y minus 4 quantity squared 8 x minus 6. All right, so number 7 is a DIY. Draw the picture, put the information in, see if you can come up with the standard form of this equation. Pause the video now. All right, so if you did the work on this one, the vertex was at -2, -3, so go to the left 2, down 3. Put your vertex. The directrix is a line at y equals -5, so you have this line drawn at -5. Now, if the directrix is here, the parabola has to go away from it, so it's going to be opening up, and the axis of symmetry would be going up, so you know that it's x squared or y to the first power. So this is what I would write down. X minus h quantity squared equals 4p y minus k. I know my vertex is at -2 and -3. Now, the distance from the vertex to the directrix is a distance of 2, and this thing is going to open up, so it's +2. So I just put a +2 in for p, and so this would be your standard form. And that's it for 9.1.